On the morning of the 11th of June 1998, a K-9 unit dog handler with the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department named Jonathan Auger drove his white Ford pickup into the Devil's Punch Bowl Natural Area, located about 60 miles northeast of downtown Los Angeles in the Antelope Valley. He was part of paratrooper in Arnie's Special Force unit before becoming deputy. An elite unit, the Special Enforcement Bureau handles SWAT and K-9 operations for the Sheriff's Department, negotiating hostage situations and serving warrants on sometimes volatile suspects, among other tasks. Auger worked nights so that he could be in the thick of the action, and he was reliable and conscientious, seldom calling in sick or using his vacation time. Because of the nature of the job, the SEB attracts the most physically fit deputies. 6 feet tall and lean, Auger was an avid runner and an experienced outdoorsman. He regularly escaped to the Sierra on the weekends for hiking and camping trips, and he had staged more than 10 climbing expeditions on Mount Whitney, the highest peak in the contiguous United States. As a member of the SEB running team, he competed against other local law enforcement agencies, and he also ran in individual races. The previous weekend, he and a few SEB deputies had completed a 50-mile ultramarathon, his 6th. 2 weeks from now, he planned to be grinding it out at the Western States 100-mile endurance run, a 20-plus-hour trek through steep mountain terrain in Northern California. At around 11:45 a.m., he spread a sunshade across his windshield and locked the truck, which he had filled at a gas station en route to the park from his Palmdale home. He starts hiking, and not long after he came across a teacher with a group of students whose classroom he had recently visited with his partner. He stops to talk with them about his route to the summit of 9,400-foot Mount Baden-Powell, 20 miles off. He said he'd be back around sunset. Then he continued running. 11 p.m. rolled and Jonathan didn't return home. His wife got worried, reported her husband missing to the Palmdale Sheriff's Station, and a pair of deputies drove to the Punch Bowl. They found the truck in the parking. It didn't look like someone tampered with the truck. When they asked park employees if they have seen or heard something out of ordinary, one of them told that one of the employees spotted a man with a green backpack heading toward parking lot where Jonathan's car was parked. Just after that, a local resident reported a gunshot from the Punch Bowl area. Deputies called for the department's search and rescue squad, which was deployed at 11:30 that night. The next day, searchers from the SEB joined the effort, as did 3 more search and rescue groups, the K-9 unit, and the Sheriff's Emergency Services Detail. Everyone who knew him thought he must have sprained his ankle and come limping back heroically like he always did. They were certain that he could handle the harsh weather of the desert. But as 24 hours passed and there was no sign of him, people started to worry that something might have happened to him. By the 3rd day, even more officers joined the hunt for Jonathan, and helicopters were scouting the landscape from above. Horses, all-terrain vehicles, and thermal imaging equipment were brought in to help find him. The ravines and crevices were scoured with infrared technology. No expense was spared. Still, even with all this manpower behind the rescue operation, Jonathan was nowhere to be found. 2 weeks later, the day of the 100-mile endurance race came and went. Many still held out hope he'd turn up for the event. He didn't. To this day, we don't know what happened to Jonathan on his run that day in June, but there are several compelling theories, ranging from someone taking Jonathan's life, Jonathan taking his own, and the potential that he simply vanished on his own accord to start a new life somewhere else. Let's examine all those possibilities. Firstly, if someone did kill Jonathan, who and why? He'd definitely made some enemies during his years in the force, that's for sure. But what officer hadn't? If someone took Jonathan's life, then they certainly covered their tracks well, as there haven't been any suspects to speak of since he disappeared. Still, the fact a local resident heard a gunshot moments after someone matching Jonathan's description walked into the parking lot, that's ominous to say the least. There were numerous meth labs set up around the Antelope Valley area. A tip even came in from an informant who said Jonathan discovered something on his jog, and he, quote-unquote, was going to be a hero and was taken care of, before being put into a hole. The validity of that tip remains unknown. Several corrupt officers were later discovered to be connected with the labs and were protecting the dealers in return for a share of the profits. Perhaps noble officer Jonathan Auger became aware of this and was going to spill the beans, so to speak. Perhaps they followed him that day to silence him, or just successfully covered up his slaying. One of Jonathan's colleagues, Darren Hager, was even kicked out of the force for trying to investigate if any corrupt officers were connected to his disappearance. Before heading out on his run that morning, Jonathan had said to his wife, "Have a nice life. Tell our daughter Chloe I love her." The couple's marriage was in disrepair. They'd been married for 12 years and were privately discussing divorce. At the time, Jonathan's wife assumed those words meant he was checking out of the marriage officially. Now she believes they may have meant he had something else in mind and was cryptically letting her know he was about to end his life. Jonathan's own family and co-workers, however, do not believe that to be the case. They say he was a survivalist with a zest for life, and there's no way he'd abandon his daughter like that. A few of his friends remain convinced he secretly returned to the military for a covert mission. Others, though, he might have escaped to Alaska, a place he'd always dreamed of living. It's not like he had a happy home life with his wife anyway. Perhaps he'd had an epiphany atop the mountain and decided it was now or never. His sister is sure that's the case when she'd last seen her brother. He was miserable with living in California, and in her words, ready to go, checked out, done. She believes he planned his whole vanishing, that he'd been stashing money away and building a new identity, and that it all culminated on that day when he finally make it seem as if he'd just gone missing. Maybe Jonathan really is still alive and well, living in Alaska. Maybe that gunshot out near the punch bowl was a coincidence and nothing more. Maybe we'll never know,